we are ready to get started here. Recording is underway. So, hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Author Talk hosted by the New York Public Library. My name is Joe Pasculo. I am one of the YA librarians at the 53rd Street branch here in Midtown Manhattan. Got the privilege of introducing my friend Tabrisha Jones. She's going to be moderating today. She's a YA librarian at the Pelham Parkway Van Nest branch in the Bronx. She will be in conversation with our special guest today, award-winning author Laura Steven, to talk about her book, The Society for Soulless Girls. So thank you, Laura, for being here. I also want to say thank you to everyone who is in attendance today. Y'all can be doing a number of different things today here on this Tuesday afternoon, but you're here with us for this virtual Author Talk event. So thank you so much. Going to be a really compelling conversation. After the discussion between Tabrisha and Laura, hopefully we have some time for Q&A. I'm going to be monitoring the chat. So if you do have any questions that come up during the conversation, please put it into the chat box. I'm going to tell you about that on the next slide. We'll do our best to get to as many questions as possible. In our chat and Q&A, we ask you to please be mindful to adhere to the library's general policies and rules. Be respectful to everybody. Tabrisha threw that in the chat right there. And while this is being recorded, you, the viewer, are not. So no worries there. Going to transition over to the next slide here, housekeeping. So just a couple of items we're going to review before we get things underway. On this slide, for those of you who are new to Google Meet, this is how we use it. So to prevent any ambient noise, we ask that you kindly silence your microphone until you're ready to speak. You can do that with the icon on the left there. The video icon, that's how you turn it on and off your camera. Pretty self-explanatory. Closed captioning. We've got some reaction emojis, so feel free to throw those in. Those are always pretty fun. If you want to leave the call altogether, there you go, Tabrisha. That red button right there, that's how you will go about exiting. Gosh, I think that is pretty much everything. The chat box is the little message on the left, and we do have an early question. Yes, Elle, go for it. Well, she's just testing out the buttons, I think. No, we're all good. Elle, perfect. Excellent. Love it. All right. So this is pretty easy to use. We've all kind of we're used to these virtual rooms now since 2020. So take a moment to familiarize yourself with that, and I'll talk about a couple other things here. It's all good. You just demonstrated how to use it. It's great. How do you guys get books? Well, the NYPL, most of the branches are now reopened. There's a couple that are undergoing improvements and renovations, but most of us are open right now. We're offering full service, including general library use, seating, unlimited browsing, laptop and computer access, and so much more. You can visit our website, nypl.org, to learn more about everything the library has to offer. Tabrisha threw in the chat right there the branches that are currently undergoing some restoration and renovation. If you don't have a library card, you can go into any library branch that is open and simply apply for one. But if you don't want to do that, you prefer ebooks, that's okay. We've got the Simply E app, which is the gray, blue, green E right there on the slide. Easily downloadable for any Android, Apple device. With your library card, you can make requests to place books on hold before you visit a branch, kind of like putting the Society for Soulless Girls on hold. It sounds like a good idea. If you're using the app, you can also place a digital hold for an ebook or audiobook. And great news. We just passed the 2-year anniversary. The NYPL is proud to announce a major policy shift that on October 5th, 2021, all late fines were eliminated. All existing fines and fees and patron accounts were cleared. You can learn more about that policy change in that link that Tabrisha just dumped in the chat right there. And I know I'm throwing a lot of information, and I know you guys are here for Laura Steven, but if you have any questions or you need any help navigating this, you can call Ask NYPL. It's 917-ASK-NYPL, or you can send an email to gethelp@nypl.org. You could also call us up at the branch. We'll be happy to hear from you. That is it for this slide. So do want to promote an event. So on October 28th, Saturday, October 28th, the Stavros Niarchos Library, which is located on 40th and 5th Avenue, they're going to have an event. It's like teen takeover. So, come dressed as you are, or you can try to win the costume contest right before Halloween. It's hosted by the teen volunteers at Stavros Niarchos' Teen Center. So there'll be trivia, games, movies. I think there's even going to be some dancing on the rooftop. That is something that that library boasts, which is kind of cool. It's a free event, but it is only for ages 13 to 19, and you do have to show proof of age, and your bags will be checked. But Tabrisha put that link in the chat right there. We've got a couple other programs that are happening throughout the system. The one on the left tomorrow at the 53rd Street Library, we're going to have both a book launch / author talk with PJ Caldas. His book, The Girl from Wudong, is coming out. We also have a couple of virtual events too. We have our virtual book tasting where we will hype up various horror, suspense, supernatural books. That's on Friday, October 27th, 3 o'clock. And we have another virtual author talk that is going to happen towards the end of November, November 26th, with Cynthia Murphy. So Tabrija put some links in the chat right there. Is that an 8? That is an 8. Sorry, Tuesday, November 28th, my eyes. Thanks for the save, Tabrija. I think with that, I'm just about done with my intro. I am going to turn it over to Tabrija, who will introduce our guest today. So take it away, Tabrija.
Thank you, Joe, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tabrija Jones, and I am the Young Adult Librarian of the Pelham Parkway Van Ness branch located in the Bronx. And I have the extreme pleasure, and I do mean extreme pleasure, of introducing our special guest today, award-winning YA author Laura Stevens. So thank you so much, Laura, for joining us this, New York City afternoon and UK evening time.
Yeah, I have my sleepy time tea. I'm not going to lie. It's like after 8 p.m. here, and I'm a granny, so...
It's okay. So hopefully the amazing conversation that we'll be having will keep you up to 9 o'clock your time. So I want to give a short bio before we get into our conversation. So Laura Stevens is an award-winning author from the northernmost town in England. She has published several books for children and young adults. Her debut novel, The Exact Opposite of OK, won the inaugural Comedy Women in Print Prize in 2019, while The Love Hypothesis was optioned for TV by an Emmy-winning team. Her books have been widely translated, and her book has appeared in the iPaper, The Guardian, and BuzzFeed. And I also want to add that the Society for Soulless Girls has been shortlisted for the YA Book Prize and also for the Diverse Book Awards. So once again, thank you so much, Laura, for joining us again.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so exciting.
So we are here to celebrate the US release of the Society for Soulless Girls. I have 2 editions, so I might be just like going to into shiny. And I'll be doing that a lot. But so we are celebrating the US release that came out last month. So for those who have not had the chance to read this wonderful book, could you give us a synopsis of it?
Okay, so it is a sapphic retelling of Jekyll and Hyde set at a haunted university, and it's in dual POV, and it follows 2 roommates. One who is Alice, who is angry at the world. She is angry at everything. She wants to burn it down, and she is really going through some stuff, and she stumbles upon this ritual in a haunted library that teaches her how to split her soul into good and evil. And the night she performs the ritual, a dead body is found, and she is left wondering whether she was responsible. And the other POV follows Lottie, who is a very like Elle Woods sunshiny type who has come to the university because 10 years ago it was closed because of 3 other unsolved murders. And she has kind of a personal connection to one of the victims, and she wants to solve that crime. And so she and Alice become roommates. Obviously, Lottie is immediately suspicious of Alice, but she herself starts to experience some malicious happenings, shall we say. So yeah, there's enemies to lovers romance between Lottie and Alice. I don't think that's a spoiler at this point. And there is also an immortal cat, which people seem to love.
I love the immortal cat. It's like the appearance that it makes. I'm like, yes, I was waiting for you to come up.
I have such a funny story, because I think we'll probably cover this, but I was not supposed to be writing a horror novel. I was supposed to be writing like a normal murder mystery retelling of Jekyll and Hyde, but I really wanted to write a horror novel. And so I kept sneaking in all this supernatural stuff, like expecting my editor to tell me to stop, and she just never did. And so that is why there is an immortal cat, because I was testing boundaries.
Well, I'm glad you did, because it is an amazing horror novel that you have written here. And so for someone who absolutely loved Jekyll and Hyde when I first read it in college, it's just like how you did this retelling of it is like, it just blew it out of the water. It's like, I was like, what? How is this like? And making it very contemporary. It was like, this is.
Thank you.
So I definitely want, like, you said that you weren't supposed to write a horror novel. It was supposed to be a murder mystery. So while you were writing, what gave you the inspiration to switch it up and just add more like supernatural and horror elements to the story?
The problem was I wasn't really supposed to write a murder mystery either. Like, as you referenced, I was known for comedy before this, and you would think that comedy and horror are very far on other ends of the spectrum. But what happened was there was a pandemic, and I became a mother in a very isolating time. And honestly, my mental health was in the gutter. And I was like, I do not remember how to tell jokes. Like, and this is a problem because that's what I'm known for. That's the thing that keeps the roof over my head. I had just won a major comedy award, and I was sitting isolated at this desk every day, like absolutely nothing's funny at all. And so I started writing the first drafts of quite a few different rom-coms until I finally emailed my editor and I was like, this isn't working. I do think I know what I want to write instead, but unfortunately all I have is a title. And she was like, okay, what's the title? And I said, The Society for Soulless Girls. And she's like, and so I knew that I wanted to do a retelling of Jekyll and Hyde. And so I kind of thought, okay, I feel like that title meshes with that ambition. And so really I expanded it all out from there. And like I say, I really pushed the boundaries as I was going along. But what I was also realizing is that I had just turned 30. Maybe I'm mixing up the timelines. Maybe I was about to turn 30. And I still had a lot of like undealt with anger problems. And I think like what I had done up until that point is I'd written these really spiky heroines, but I'd never actually tackled it head on. And so all of this kind of coalesced into a melting pot. And to be honest, the horror elements just came from, I watched The Haunting of Hill House one too many times and I was like, I want to do that. Like the way that makes me feel, I want to do that to people.
I mean, I had an opposite reaction watching The Haunting of Hill House because I love the book, but I watched the miniseries. I was like, what is this?
It's completely different. I think if you go into it like accepting that it is not, it's just basically unrecognizable from the book in every way, then you'll have a good time. And if you're expecting a loyal adaptation,
I that's how I'm gonna look into The Fall of the House of Usher because I really want to see it, but I know it's not gonna be anything like the story. So I was like, I'm expecting it not to be different. It's gonna be completely different. So yeah, I might have to rewatch that. But that is a very interesting origin story because I've read the exact opposite of Okay and absolutely loved it, and it was hilarious and it was funny. And then when I heard that you were writing this book and the Society for Soulless Girls, I was like, is she okay?
She was
like, I'll read it, but like,
she was not okay.
So, and I was like, I wanted to read it. I was like, this is like a huge, like not a huge departure, but just like a U-turn. And I feel like you still have that humor in here, but you just added horror and supernatural and a mystery in it. You just added, it's like a great genre kind of. And and that's what really makes it like really a great standout YA novel, because it's just like it has everything in the mixture of it. And what I really liked about it is like you put a lot of philosophy and I wanted to ask, like, was that something that you knew for yourself, or did you have to do research in order to put that into the story? Because while I was reading it, I was learning so much. I was like, oh, I didn't know about this. Like, I have to look this up.
So I've always had that interest. I didn't study it in any formal capacity. In fact, when I was in school, this is very much a British thing, but when we do A level, which is sort of the highest level of high school, we used to have this mandatory thing called general studies. And it sort of incorporated philosophy, and it was the only test I ever failed. I got all A's and I failed general studies because that's not a correct answer, and it would drive me crazy. My neurodivergent brain was like, I can't actually accept that there's not a correct answer here. But as I've gotten older and I've, you know, gone into the world and realized that nothing has the kind of like black and white answers that you're looking for, that's when I've sort of embraced it more. And I think because I'm not being graded critically, that's important. I can just enjoy these like dilemmas and paradoxes for what they are. And so yeah, I did have to do a bit of research, but I'm also this is very nerdy, I'm a member of a chess club. I play competitive chess, and actually you'd be surprised how many philosophers play chess. And when I started going to chess, they would all just sit around and talk about philosophy and chess, and it was great. And I think I absorbed quite a lot of it through that. And unfortunately, I actually had to cut a lot of philosophy out of the book because my editor was just like, I mean, that's interesting, but it has no bearing on the plot. Like, we need pace in YA novels. Like, cut this down. And so, like, I hope that I've struck that balance between things that I find interesting, but that also relate to what the girls are going through. And I think that's what really appealed to me about Jekyll and Hyde as a retelling, because I'm so interested in like philosophical questions of morality, like what is good and evil, and does intent matter? And I think that is a really topical thing, actually. In a lot of, you know, online arguments, you can hear people screaming, intent doesn't matter, it's the consequence. I'm like, actually, that's a very big philosophical debate, and I don't think you realize that. And so all these ideas really fed into that desire to retell Jekyll and Hyde, and it felt like a really natural fit for me to explore that passion.
Yeah, I definitely remember reading Jekyll and Hyde. There was just a lot of that, like the intent, and just like a lot of questions like, do we have this like anger and evil side within us, or is it just based on like the world that we live in, or it's just like it's nature over nurture? And reading that part, and I didn't find it any bearing down, and like I didn't find it like driven, or I feel like if you put it in, I probably would have been fine with it. If you allowed you to leave it in, I would have been fine. I was like, I like learning while reading books, but it was just like I enjoyed it because it was just like, definitely you don't see that a lot in YA novels when they have those kind of philosophical questions, but there are teens that do like ask those kind of questions, like why do you have this? Why do you have that? They're in that, like, you know, roaming and kind of questioning phase. And I feel like Jekyll and Hyde is like that perfect, like, classic story that really explores like what they're truly feeling. And it seems like you really you love Jekyll and Hyde, and that was why you chose it as to do a retelling compared to other books. But I don't know if you have like a further explanation as to why you chose Jekyll and Hyde compared to other more common classics that are constantly being retold.
So I actually for a long time believed that I didn't like classics, and it turns out I was just reading the wrong classics. And I think what was prescribed to us on a school curriculum was very different to what's actually out there and what can be enjoyed. And I always felt like I was kind of broken because I loved reading, but I didn't like Jane Austen. I didn't like the Brontes, and I feel like I can practically hear people going, you know, but
I just did that a little bit when you said you didn't like Jane Austen, but continue. We can talk.
I understand the Moors, they're very brooding, and I understand there's the love, but for me personally, I enjoy stories that have love in them, but for me, it can't be the only thing. And I know there's the social exploration and all that stuff. It turns out I really need murder. Like I need people to die violently for me to be interested. And so when I discovered that whole genre of classics existed, this was when I was like 25. I fully left school and I was like, never again. I'm just going to read the stuff that's exciting. And so I went through this real phase of like classic horror. So I did obviously Jekyll and Hyde, I did Turn of the Screw, I did Dracula, I did Frankenstein, all that kind of more like speculative genre stuff. And obviously Dorian Gray, because I just retold that as well. And I was like, okay, people talk about classics for a reason. There's definitely something here. And if there's one thing I could tell like actual teens, it's that don't write off all the classics just because you don't like what you've been told to read at school, because I did that and I'm so mad at myself because I missed out on so many great stories. And I think that's why it's a really exciting time, because as you say, lots of things are being retold, and if that brings that story to a new audience and makes it seem more accessible, I mean, mine is more of a reimagining rather than a retelling, but if it inspires that teen to pick up the original, maybe, I think that's great. And people have mixed views on retellings, but I'll always think it's a positive thing for that reason.
No, I agree, and I also do agree, like, how you're feeling about, I mean, I absolutely love Jane Austen,
Yeah.
but I also love Frankenstein. That's like my favorite speculative fiction. I can read that as many times as I want. I love Mary Shelley. I think she was ahead of her time.
Does it ever make you feel a bit sick that she was like a literal teenager when she wrote it, and you're like,
I know. I was like,
how did you just invent a genre when you were like 19?
And then in the night, she wrote it in the night. I'm like, I was like, are you okay, Mary?
Yeah, that's the bigger question.
Yeah, and when you read about her history and also her mother with Mary Wollstonecraft and her father quickly remarried, she was like obsessed with death, and you realize, like, oh, okay, that's probably inspired her to write that kind of story, write Frankenstein.
And it's again that kind of philosophical question: what is life? Like, can we create life? What is the soul? Can we create that? And without that, is it really life? And so I think that's what, when I found these like classics that had a deep philosophical question, but it was also kind of horror-ish, speculative-ish, that for me was the like catch point where I was like, I can get into this.
And it's like they tend to, because I am seeing a lot more retellings of Jekyll and Hyde, but not as, like, with every exquisite thing. He did a retelling of Dorian Gray, not as much as Dorian Gray, because it seems like it's just like one of those under the rug. It's not as, like, it is too philosophical. It's not like it doesn't have that, like, panache compared to Frankenstein, even though the way that people have retold Frankenstein is not the way that it's not in the way that it's really meant to be told. People keep assuming that the monster is called Frankenstein, and I have to keep telling people so many times. They're like, "You mean the monster Frankenstein?" Like, no, the doctor, the doctor. So, but that is like perfect segue into my next question, and I hope you're thinking the same thing when I'm asking this. If your publisher or agent gives you a choice to retell a classic of your choosing, which classic do you choose?
So I think actually at this point I could probably go to my publisher and be like, hey, I want to retell this, and they'd be like, okay, like these two are going all right. So obviously I just did Dorian Gray, which actually comes out in the US in 2025, which I know is quite a ways away, but I'm very excited about that. It'll be in hardcover. I'm taking a little break from retellings, I think. So I talked about this at a literary festival over the weekend, and I think there've been some really valid conversations about who has the right to retell what. And so they've kind of like made me take a step back. Obviously, I would love to have a go at something like Frankenstein or Carmilla. But I don't have the doorway into it yet. I think for a long time, I knew I wanted to do Dorian Gray and Jekyll and Hyde. I couldn't figure out a route into the story that was bringing something fresh and bringing the modern female perspective and everything we deal with while still retaining that sort of ember from the original. And I haven't found something like that. I think Frankenstein, the temptation nowadays is to go down the artificial intelligence route, because obviously, and I wouldn't want to do that. I would want it to still feel very very horror. So I haven't found my right way into it. And then I think also I really want to do like a Carmilla or a Dracula situation, but there are a lot of vampire stories out there. I'm not sure if you know, and I don't think enough twist on it. Whereas with Dorian Gray, once I got that twist of like the portraits are a murder weapon, I was like, okay, we're in. So we'll see actually what I'm working on next. I'm working on three different things, and they're all original. So we'll see.
I was thinking when I came up with this question, I was like, I hope she says Frankenstein, because that would I would love that, and you did. But I do agree, because it is with Frankenstein, it is hard to think of like how to put that in a female perspective, or like in like if and the same with what was the other title you just mentioned?
Carmilla.
Yeah, Carmilla. And I just read a graphic novel that was an adaptation of Carmilla, and they took it into New York City, and I think
Cool.
in the 70s, 80s, and that was really good.
That's cool.
Um, and I do agree with that, but I mean, I would love to see Carmilla, because I think a lot of people forget about that
Mhm.
story. They just focus on Dracula, and they're like, well, no, there were other vampire stories.
But remember the lesbians.
I know, yes, that too. And I'm like,
Yeah.
but still, you need to tell the story. So to go back to the Society of Soulless Girls,
Yeah.
so I like with Alice and Lottie, they're just such distinctive characters. And I'm gonna ask an author a very difficult question. What would you say, like, between the two perspectives, was your most fun to write? Like, who would you say is your favorite? And then also, who do you think is more like you?
So the answer I usually give is that they are my own Jekyll and Hyde, and Lottie is how I present on the outside. I know I come across very like, and I have the blonde hair and I'm very hyperactive, but Alice is how I feel on the inside. And I think the Lottie I feel on the outside is largely a construct. And that's why it was very interesting to play with the dynamic of them both. So the most fun to write was definitely Alice, because it was like, okay, take the darkest parts of you and just make it dark and make her worse. And that was very cathartic, you know, like I tried to suppress this stuff for so long. And I think actually a really great note that I got from my editor after I turned in the first draft, she was just like, I think you can go darker with Alice. And that feels so validating, because I was just like, I think if I put down my nastiest thoughts and my most horrible impulses, why would anyone root for that character? And yet the amount of people that have seen themselves in Alice, I'm just like, oh, everyone's as pissed off as I am. This is great. Whereas Lottie, I feel like I did understand her on like a bone deep level. And I find this isn't going to make me sound so sadistic, but I find something really satisfying in creating a very like optimistic, positive character and then breaking them. Like, what happens when you don't have that? What happens when things start spiraling out of your control and everything is lost? Like, who are you then? And so they were both really fun to write for very different reasons. Who is my favorite? It would have to be Alice. Like, it would have to be Alice, you know. Like,
sounds like
who would I want to play a drinking game with? Lottie. Who would I actually want to go and sit in like a little common room with and talk about the meaning of life? That's Alice.
you have like your different activities. So it's like, okay, drinking game, Lottie.
Yeah.
Just like let's have a cup of tea and talk.
Exactly.
Like, I definitely like fell in tune with Alice, and I feel like any person reading it, and I think any person on earth will have that intent, like that Alice personality, because like reading some of Alice's dialogue, like she was talking about like what some things that people think about. It's like, oh, like throwing a baby down the stairwell, and like, well, people are not going to actually do it, because I do, and I'm not going to do it. Just throwing it out there, but there are some scenarios that you do think of, like, oh, what happens if I do this? And what happens if you do that? It's not because you're evil. It's just because your mind is like an enigma, and it's just like wandering on and just thinking about these different scenarios, and you just don't know. And I think that's what's like when you were talking about like that speculative fiction, and that's what I really liked about The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, because a lot of the complaints that I get from that novel is like, oh, it's not scary. It's like, yes, it is.
Yeah.
It's the scary of the human mind. Like
Yes.
how you said it was sadistic, like how you broke down Alice. And it was like, that was how in The Haunting of Hill House, like a human being can be broken down just by locking them in a house and just like creating this atmosphere that might actually be happening or might just be all in their mind. And that's just like this, like the complications of the human mind is just like can be so far out there. Like we still don't know about it. And I just found that like Alice's conversations about that just like so fascinating.
I'm with you as well. Like I prefer my horror to be more psychological horror than kind of slasher horror. We were kind of talking about this before.
Mhm.
But the things that really stick with me, like you say, are the very human things. And my own mind terrifies me and other people's minds terrify me. And so tapping into that will always be at the core of my horror novels. I don't think I'll ever write one with just a generic monster or a ghost. You know, that doesn't frighten me. It's what people can do to other people that frightens me, and why. But I think like what was very healing for me to write about was anger, and not just those kind of like impulses you get, but the way you can lash out and what happens when they get out. And what was really, I think what I realized over the course of writing this book was that anger is actually a form of self-preservation. It's wired into us for a reason. And I also became very interested in anger as a political tool, because often it's the only political tool we have as women, right? And there's a quote that I really love in the book, and I'm going to paraphrase it probably quite badly, but it's that if you let anger run free, it's like wildfire, and it's just indiscriminate in what it destroys. But if you can learn to kind of like position it and take aim with it, then it becomes a candle and it can light the path forward, and you can keep it burning. You don't have to extinguish your anger forever. It's just using how to channel it in ways that are healthy and productive. And something that I think about so much is how we are just as young women not really given that permission. Like a lot of the coping mechanisms that are given to young boys, just to stereotype. I grew up in the 90s, so the stereotypes were all true. Was to the boys would be like, they would be play fighting and they would be playing rugby and they'd be yelling at each other, but then they'd be friends again 10 minutes later. And if a girl tried to do any of those things, it was just like, oh, it's not, it's not very becoming, And those cliches are really true. And so we had to bury it way down, and we weren't given any sort of pressure release valve or anything. And so that's something that I really had a great time exploring. Actually, one of my influences for the, this is a slight tangent, for the book was a short story by Daisy Johnson. I forget what it's called. But it was really short. It's only a couple of thousand words. And it's about this group of grown-up female friends who get together for like a wine night, and their husbands are there, but they're in another room. And these women just start absolutely beating each other up. Like their fight turns extremely physical and feral. And it was so shocking to me. And I remember sitting with myself afterwards and being like, why does that feel so shocking that those girls were punching each other? And yet you see men beat each other up all the time in TV shows and movies. And so that was another seed that planted into this, is like women can be violent too. We physically don't often have that kind of outlet. And one of my favorite scenes from the book actually is Lottie and Alice having a conversation. And Alice is really surprised to hear that Lottie also deals with anger issues, and she talks about hockey. She plays field hockey, and how that, like the act of just physically hammering a ball actually is really therapeutic. And I played ball sports as a kid, so like I really resonated with that. Sorry, I've gone on a massive tangent.
No, it was fascinating. I do want to read that story because and it is interesting how you say that, because I do find like when we hear about like women or like fighting or doing something that we see as men do, we're like, it's shocking. I'm like, wait, why is it so shocking? And I feel like, and that is the same thing like with how our mind is wired, how our mind is like preconditioned.
Yeah.
I see your dog. He's just.
And I'm not. Yeah, hi Obi. You can see his tail in the window. Yeah, and I'm not saying I want to like punch my friends.
Me neither. I'm not.
You get it. You get it, Tabby.
So before we get started on our continuing on our conversation, I do have like a little fun little game that I want to get to before
Mhm.
continue on. So I'm going to do a sample this or that, and it's going to be a Halloween edition. And I got this from the internet. So,
Fun. Okay, let's do it.
but it's they're pretty good. So okay, so this or that, witches or zombies?
Witches.
Oh yeah, definitely. Um, vampires or werewolves?
Vampires.
Really?
I feel like vampires can be hot. And yet werewolves, I'm just thinking like I'm thinking fur, I'm thinking bad breath, you know?
That's true. I just I like the teeth thing, and then also maybe I'm thinking too much like Twilight because I'm thinking
Yeah,
like
no, I wasn't a Twilight girly.
yeah.
Wasn't a Twilight girly. I'm thinking of the new Interview with a Vampire, which is really dark. If you're a teenager, be careful. Kind of hot though. Like
Yeah, they are. They are. I've seen the promos where they are very hot.
yeah.
So when you said Interview with the Vampire, the new series, I'm like, okay, I can go with that. If it
See where
was
I'm going.
yeah. Ghost or demons?
Demons, because I love like a bargain. I like a curse, and I love what it can do to people.
I feel like if the ghosts were like the ghosts from the TV show, then I would be good. Demons, demons, it can't be. If you like with the horns and stuff, they have to have human skin. They have to be in human skin. That I could deal with.
I feel you.
Trick or treat?
I mean, of course, treat. Who doesn't like a little treat? Why would you choose a trick? I've never understood. My brain is too literal, so I've never really got trick or treat. Like, what are you talking about? Obviously, a treat. Always a treat.
If you are that sinister and you want a trick, you just want a person to tease you and refer to you like trick. Okay. Oh, this is gonna be a tough one. Scary movies or scary stories?
I think scary stories because they can't rely on jump scares, and so by nature they have to be a bit more psychological. Like I think so much of what's considered scary on a TV screen is just blood and gore and jump scares, and I'm fine with it. I'm not squeamish, whatever. I'm just not scared by it. So if I really want to be scared, it has to be a book, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's been like a lot of books, especially that I've read in the past couple of weeks that have been scary, and it's something that I continuously think about. And then when I watch something on the screen, I'm like, all right.
I think there's this idea in horror writing that like the scariest thing is the thing that you can't see. And so for me, as soon as you see like a monster or whatever on screen, I'm like, I'm not scared by it anymore. I'm scared of its shadow. I'm scared of like the slight reflection of it in a mirror. But as soon as you see, whereas in a book, you never fully see it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's terrifying.
Yep, and you never and how it like builds up to the suspense, like you feel that there's something coming, but you don't know what it is, but you know something is coming.
I love the dread.
Yes. That pin in your stomach, you're just like, I need to chocolate or sour candies.
It didn't matter what you said after chocolate. It would have been chocolate. I'm like obsessed. You could be like chocolate, your family. It wouldn't matter. It would be chocolate. It would be chocolate.
That's where we part ways because I do not like chocolate.
No, I mean,
no. I'm one of
I
the
kind of wish I didn't. It consumes so much of my waking thoughts. It's like, but when am I next gonna have chocolate? I'm still 10 inside, really.
Don't worry, I have many friends who probably said the same thing. They're like, chocolate. I did not hear anything else. Ouija board or Bloody Mary?
Oh, Ouija board, like the Bloody Mary, like that's soup with vodka in it. Why? No, that's disgusting.
See, I was wondering if they were talking about the Bloody Mary, the drink, or chanting Bloody Mary in the bathroom. I think they're talking about chanting Bloody Mary.
Still Ouija board then.
Yeah,
Still
I
Ouija
would go.
board. I don't want your toilet demons. No.
I did that once with a couple of friends. I was like, no, I can't do this. No, open the door. I'm not doing this. So even though the Ouija board would still scare me, I'll still pick Ouija board.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, and last one, Halloween party or attend a haunted house.
As soon as you said party, I was like, definitely the other thing. Like, I don't like to be around other people, particularly, especially in like a loud situation. There's going to be music that will be too loud for me. It will be too late, fundamentally. Like, parties seem to happen too late in the evening. Maybe a party between 5 and 7 I would do. So I'm going to say the haunted house because I'm actually a really cynical person and I would love to be proven wrong.
I would have chosen haunted house too. I don't like being in a party for a long period of time. I did go, I did a haunted tour in like an old music house, and while he was talking, he said like, "Oh, we did have like those like kind of Ghostbusters, like detectives. They came around. They did like they tested to see if there was like any ghost activity and stuff, and they were like, yeah, they tested this one room, and it went off the charts, and it was in that room right there. Of course I was in that room, and I was like, I moved him out of the way. I was like, I'm gonna stand over here while you finish your tour. You
No,
don't
I'd be like, let me see then, bring it on. Like, I'm gonna look at every single corner of this room. I'm like the worst person. Like, I went to my friend's wedding and they had this like magician that walked around doing like little tricks on people, but I'm that person that I'm like, I'm looking at both hands, I'm watching what you can't fool me. I'm sorry, like not happening.
you need to take you with the haunted house.
Yes, I need to go. I once went to see a psychic and she made me leave after like 10 minutes. Like
Like, you're not helping.
no. She's like, I don't know why you're here. I can tell you don't believe me. And I'm like, well.
Oh my god, that is awesome. So thank you for playing this or that. So back to Society for Soulless Girls. And for our audience members, if you have any questions for Laura, feel free to enter them into the chat right now. So I know we mentioned a couple of other books, but are there any other recommended reads that you would like to recommend to our audience members if after they read Society for Soulless Girls, if there are any other books that they might also enjoy?
Okay, the thing you loved about Soulless was like the angry girls becoming monstrous and trying to tear down the patriarchy, then I Feed Her to the Beast and the Beast is Me by Jameson Shea is great. It's about this ballerina at a really elite academy who is fed up with the racism and the misogyny that she faces, and she goes down into the catacombs of Paris and makes a deal with this like river of blood, which already very exciting. So I would recommend that. And if you love the dark academia and the sort of more speculative elements, then definitely Curious Tides by Pascal Lassalle that came out, I believe last week. Amazing. It's kind of like a ninth house type thing. And also A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed, which I absolutely loved. And that was just beautifully written, but it's a bit more lyrical and it's a bit more about, philosophy and trauma and what it means to be human.
I definitely want to read I Feed the Beast. Like, I've heard so many great things about it, and it's definitely on my. Hopefully, I will get into it. Get to it at towards the end of this month. But just looking at the cover and just like the synopsis of it, I was like, oh, I definitely have to read it.
I feel like you're gonna be scared, but you're gonna love it.
I mean, I don't have a problem with reading a book and being scared.
Yeah.
It's just like watching something and being scared. This is why I can't watch Stranger Things, because I'm like, no, I'm like
Yeah.
little creatures. I'm like, no. So we do have a question from Kate. He asks, have you dropped any Easter eggs for any upcoming books?
Yeah. One of my answers to trick or treat, not trick or treat, the they saw that round is kind of an Easter egg. And you won't have to wait too long because I'm announcing a big new book tomorrow. And it is a supernatural love story that spans 1,000 years, and it transcends time and fate and gender. And I'm so excited to share and shout about it. And I did promise on Instagram that I was going to leak something, so there you go. It was also inspired by the song Exile by Taylor Swift. And it's funny because for like a year while I was writing it, I was constantly posting about Exile book, and then I just suddenly stopped, and people were like, well, obviously it's being picked up. But then I had to be quiet for 9 months. But here we are.
So, because I saw your Instagram post saying that you're going to announce big news. I was like, okay, I have to bookmark this because I have to keep checking your feed to make sure what what is this? Oh yeah, and Lainey is saying a book inspired Exile. Say less.
I'm fully gonna go full shameless and just tag Taylor in every single post about the book until she reads it. She needs to. I might even this is really attention grabby and desperate, but I might dedicate the book to her, and then she legally has to read it, I would say.
No problems. I go down that route. So we did cover the upcoming projects, and you have to wait until tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I did want to ask, what you have had an extensive writing career, and I did want to ask, what are your favorite activities when you're not writing? What do you love to do when you're not sitting behind the laptop and jotting down amazing words to create great novels?
I honestly just have so many hobbies. I'm such a tragic activity person. I really am, and this is where I really relate to Lottie. So physical pursuits, I like to play tennis, I like to run, I like to lift weights, just any form of physical activity. I'm just sign me up for. I have an excess amount of energy, probably because I drink too much coffee and eat too much chocolate, and I just need to be moving a lot. And then in terms of hobbies, I'm really into chess, as I mentioned, to quite a tragic degree. I play competitively, I play in leagues, I play in tournaments, and it is exactly like the Queen's Gambit. Nothing has changed since the 1960s. So I do that. I cook, I bake, I video game. I just want to be doing stuff all the time. And when people are like, how do you fit it in? I'm like, I don't know what other people are doing. I don't when they're like, how do you have the time? I'm like, but what are you doing? What are you doing with your time? I'm not cleaning my house, and I think that's probably the problem.
I mean, you're getting something done, and that's the important.
It's called prioritizing.
Exactly. And I love chess.
Do you?
I do. Yeah, I'm not good. I mean, I love games that are critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And chess is you can just plot out your stuff. I may not win a lot of games, but I just love how you can plot and just think of it strategically and stuff like that. I don't get to play it as much, but I do enjoy it more than checkers. So
I just don't like any board game that has an element of chance. I'm too much of a control freak. Monopoly, no, grow up. You have to roll a dice. How can you execute a strategy, right? If you are just rolling a dice and hoping for the best. No, I want to control every single thing that happens on that board. And this is what appeals to me.
I'm gonna clip this and share it with my family, because this is why we are not allowed to play Monopoly ever, as a fan, because we fight and we have argued, and you're like, we can't do this. So I'm going to share this clip, and it's This is why.
My best friend's first, she literally got engaged to this guy that they'd been together for like 2 years and they'd never had an argument. And then one day they played Monopoly and he wouldn't sell her the property she needed. And she turned it into a full-blown, like, I just don't like you as a person. Like, I don't trust you and your motivations as a person. And it was a real genuine argument. They didn't speak for quite some time. And I'm like, I feel that. This is why we're best friends.
It's like, I think the motive of this story is like, don't play Monopoly if you want to keep your family, your friends, significant other, playing all your relationships intact. Because it is a game that just breaks people up. Like I hate Monopoly with a passion. Jane did ask, what time will your big news be revealed tomorrow?
It depends on the whims of the bookseller. Usually in the UK, the time is around 9-10 a.m. There is a chance it might be kicked till Thursday, which I'm hoping doesn't happen, but I think it will be in the morning. If it's tomorrow, it'll be in the morning. And trust me, you won't miss it. Like, I'll be banshee screaming about it for days, weeks, months.
Okay, so we're about time, sadly, because this has been an amazing conversation and I could talk hours with you, Laura. So I do have one final question. So as librarians, we usually do what is called a book talk. And it is like a brief synopsis or a description of the book to encourage our patrons to go and check out the book. So we are going to turn the tables onto you. And we're going to you for 1 minute to do a short book talk of the Society for Soulless Girls to encourage our audience members and for those who are going to go out and watch this recording later on to check it out in our library. So whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Okay, so Society for Soulless Girls is a sapphic retelling of Jekyll and Hyde. It's set at a haunted university and it has enemies to lovers, romance, and an immortal cat. And this is for you if you have ever felt that you are too much, you feel things too deeply, if you've ever felt you're too angry for the world and you just don't know what to do with that anger, and you really want the experience of reading a character that's just letting it all go. Like, she doesn't care, she will burn the world down. And if you really want to read a romance with her, with this completely sunshiny optimist, and how they interact with each other, this book is for you. There's a murder mystery, there are horror elements, but they're not super gory or super scary. It's very spooky and atmospheric. It's absolutely perfect for spooky season because it all takes place between September and December, I want to say. And yeah, that's about it. I got really panicked about the time because my clock changed from 20:58 and I'm like, oh, I'm done. Okay.
No, you did great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm so competitive. I'm like, I don't need a minute. I only need 40 seconds.
I definitely don't want to play this with you.
Yeah, no, I'm crazy. Like, my husband simply refuses. He simply refuses.
Just say, like, it's either this or Monopoly.
But he would choose Monopoly, like some kind of psychopath.
Oh,
like,
what? No.
He thinks the random element keeps things fresh. I'm like, why are we married? I don't know.
We think that. We think that, Laura. Okay, so thank you so much, Laura. This was amazing. And thank you for everyone who is able to attend this evening, wherever you are, or this afternoon. Please take the time to check out the Society for Soulless Girls. It is now freely available in our library collection, also the ebook and the e-audiobook. And also check out Laura's other books. We have The Exact Opposite of Okay, and Then I Turned Into a Mermaid, if you are looking for something much lighter and also funnier at the same time. So you cannot go wrong with any of Laura's books. And then also, if you're looking for more spooky reads for Halloween, if you visit our NYPL website, we have a full length of different blog posts that librarians and other staff members have given that are great recommendations to make sure that your Halloween season is very spooky. And then please join us next month, which we will be in conversation with Claire McFall. She is the author of the Ferryman trilogy, and she will be talking about Adcast. That is the epic finale. I'm really sad that it's the final book, but I'm really excited to talk to Claire. This will be next month, Tuesday, November 7th. That is the United States election day at 3 p.m. If you're done voting, come and watch us virtually with Claire McFall. It's going to definitely be a great conversation as well. So again, thank you for everyone who is able to attend. Thank you, Laura, for joining us today. And if you are able to visit the Van Ness branch, we have free copies. These are books that are not in the library collection. These are books that you are able to take home with you and keep. The Society of Soulless Girls when you visit the Van Ness branch. So just make sure to ask for me, and I will be more than happy to give you a free copy. Make sure to follow Laura on social media if you want to be aware of that big news announcement that she will be giving tomorrow. And also make sure to follow us on social media. Pelham Parkway Van Ness and 53rd Street are available on Facebook and Instagram. So just make sure they follow us to keep updated to all the exciting programs that we always be having. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you again, Laura, for joining us. And let's not forget, happy Halloween, everyone.
Thank you.
you.
Bye.